Hi, Tasha Miner here from Hounds in Harmony. I wanted to talk about the BAT, or Behavior Adjustment Training Program, developed by Grisha Stewart. This game is super helpful for desensitizing dogs to triggers and even counter-conditioning it. It's very different from the Look at That game that we did before, but it has a lot of the similar terminology. So I wanted to go over what's really important for this game is the word trigger, which means whatever makes the dog upset or fearful, and threshold, which is the point and distance at which the dog can notice a trigger without getting upset by it. You'll notice that the dog gets upset because they might do something like stare really hard, or their posture will get really forward, and they might even lead into lunging, barking, growling, snarling, all that ugly stuff we don't want to see. So when you're doing behavior adjustment training, you're teaching the dog a new skill. They can ask for space, which is what that big aggressive display does, without the aggressive display. They can help you understand when they need more space, and then it's up to you, the owner and the handler, to be able to give that space to them. This is a really great game because it requires nothing of the trigger. The trigger doesn't have to walk away, doesn't have to get behind anything, doesn't have to do anything. The trigger just has to hold still. So this can be great to practice at a park where you can have a lot of space and someone's just hanging out with their dog, or if there's people skating, or if there's children playing, they're going to be in the same area and you can work off of that. The really important thing about this is repetitions, because you're going to go from really far away to a little closer and a little closer. You don't want to do it too fast, so the number of repetitions is more important than the distance that you close. So when you're doing this game, you go to the dog's threshold where they're not upset, but they clearly can see and notice the trigger, and then you wait for them to offer you a calming signal. A calming signal has a very long list of behaviors. I include displacement behaviors with it, but the short answer is it is not the lunging, barking, growling, snarling, staring that you normally see. So it could be something like sniffing, it could be looking away, it could be lip licking, it could be blinking, it could be sitting down, it could be scratching, it could be basically anything that isn't that ugly stuff that we don't like. Once they do that behavior, you mark it with a yes and you run the opposite direction. You want away from the trigger. When you practice this a number of times, the dog will get the point that it's not really going to have to interact with this thing, and you might notice that you can get a lot closer a lot sooner. I would caution against doing that too much, because sometimes a dog will think that things are going to go great, and then they get really close, realize that they feel too close, and then they get upset when everything was going really well. So if you're taking 2 or 3 steps at a time, and then all of a sudden the dog's doing really great 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps, you want to stop the dog early. Don't go in big leaps like that. You want to keep it to the same rhythm that you were doing before, even if the dog seems to be doing okay. In my experience, dogs can sometimes forget that they're upset, get too close, and then go, oh, whoops, never mind, I don't like this. So you want to help them avoid that. When the dog is getting really handy at the game, then you want to make sure that you can encourage the trigger to be more exciting if at all possible. And that's why I like to do this kind of thing in private sessions, where I can set up the trigger to be at my control so that I can make them move more, or I can make them stop if the dog starts to get upset. And that's why private training is so handy. But I do my best in the IDOGS group classes to simulate the same thing. When you're doing the run away from the trigger part, it is absolutely fine to run back to another person that the dog knows who can shower them with praise for being such a brave dog. It's totally fine to give them a treat when you get really far away, and that can be really helpful, not only to reward for the good behavior, but also to give the dog a break. You don't want to just work on keep getting closer and closer. You want to put that pressure on by getting to that to that threshold point, and then you want to take the pressure off, and you want it to be off more than it's on. Otherwise, the dog will get stressed, that stress will build, and then you'll see this eruption at some random point that you couldn't possibly anticipate, except that it always does come if you keep putting pressure on for too long. So it's really important to balance how close you get and respect when the dog notices and don't go closer. And then you also want to respect not putting pressure on for too long. The break and being away is also just as important. How far you go away, I usually make it a minimum of 20 feet. You can do more if the dog is still kind of checking on the trigger, even when they're getting the love or the treat. You can do 30, 40 feet. But you want it to be, I would say, at least 20. Okay? So I do this at IDOGS as well, and if you see this going on, that's why. Thanks.